Well, despite the weather forecast saying it was going to be dry, it's still ever so slightly raining, not badly. So I'm going to get the centre punch and spot weld drills, which I think I have now found, and remove this bit, and then continue to work out what I need to do in terms of prep to get the new wing on. Well, all the best laid plans and that. I couldn't actually find my spot weld drills after all, so I've just been going around with a big, what's that, 8mm, and then changing the angle of it. But even so, it's gone through a couple of them. Not too fussed, because I'll have to dress that all, fill in these holes before I then plug weld my new wing on top. So now I will be attacking it with the only chisel I have left, which is a masonry one, just to try and start prizing that apart. Right, got that bit off. The metal was a bit thin in a couple of places where surface corrosion had started forming, and it actually tore out. So when you feel on the back side, what's quite strange is it's really good. So I think what's happened is water has got into this area and then sat between the two seams and actually rotted out between those faces, rather than the water coming up from the underside of the car. So that's the back side, and you can just see it's just very slight surface corrosion between the two parts. So before I put the new wing on, I'll need to dress all of this, weld those holes up and make it nice and smooth. I've just cleaned up that bit down there, got the final bits off. Now I'm going to go and get the saw and chop around that wheel arch to get all of this frilliness off, and then I can start making up a template to go back on here. Probably patch these bits separately and then just weld a strip on all the way round. And as I said, I think in the last video, I want to be really sure that I cut no further up than the radius of there, because that's going to be one of my datum lines for putting the new wing on. So I don't want to sort of chop it up here, weld the flange on up here, then wonder why it fits up there and doesn't fit down here. So it's going to be quite a neat operation to cut that off. I might do it in sections so I've got a nice clear access and not deflecting the saw off something. And when I say saw, I basically mean 1mm cutting disc on an angle grinder. A few moments later, I've just gone round with the saw as I said I would, and chopped off the remainder of that arch lip all the way round. So that is just literally one edge with a slight roll on it. Well, that's what I was intending. So I've got a slight roll there and then a few other places. Gone a bit wrong there because my goggles steamed up. I'm now going to cover that in zinc primer, just because it's quite damp out here and I don't want it to flash rust. And then I'll go and get some cardboard and try and start thinking about making up a part to go in there. You've got to be quite careful, because it's easy to think, right, I just need a 1-inch strip all the way around. But of course, this arch, when you stand on it, look at it from above, it does actually curve in at the bottoms, comes up, goes around, and then dives in again. So if you laid that out on a piece of paper, it would actually be probably a big C shape or something. We'll find out. But yeah, if I need to, I can make it in shorter sections, then weld it, but I'd rather make it in one. A lesson on cardboard, a brief lesson. Ordinarily, I'll try and use cardboard that's that sort of thickness, same as a cornflakes packet or something like that. Reason being, you can scribe lines in it and it folds quite tight radiuses, kind of similar to 1 or 0.9mm thick steel. But I don't have anything in that sort of cardboard that long, so I'm using a Dyson cardboard box that I got out of our bin at work, and it's got the corrugations running crossways like that, so hopefully that should fold nice. I'm not anticipating it coming out perfect first time, but at least it'll give me a template that I can then chop steel out, and then I'll cut it oversize, I'll weld it, probably tack it on, and then I can sand back, if that makes sense. It's easier than trying to get a perfect fit first time, plus because you're welding onto like what will be the inside of a corner, you can get nice, good, reliable welds, and then all you have to do is when you sand it back, be careful that you don't sand right through that and lose all your strength. Right, so here's the general plan. That is my cardboard. I am going to do it in 2 sections, and I'm probably going to join it there in the middle of the wheel arch, because that kind of makes sense. So I'm just going to hold that up there and then draw around it with a pen, but already you can see, well maybe you can't, I can, sort of the way that that wouldn't have been straight at all. And the other thing that I've got to remember, and I have just reminded myself from looking at the other side of the car, is that this doesn't sit dead perpendicular to that edge. At the top it actually rolls in and up slightly, and I'd rather have it in and up and then be clamping the two pieces of steel, that being the outer skin and this inner skin. I'd rather be pulling it down to get a flange to then plug weld onto than trying to beat the new one, or sorry, beat it all up to get the wing on, because it just won't work. Imagine if that flange was sticking down, I hit it up, it would just try and pull that panel in, which it's the whole point of doing this, is not to disturb that shape. Hopefully that's clear. If not, don't worry, it'll make sense later. So that's it drawn out very roughly. That line at that end indicates my line at the centre of the wheel arch about there. The other thing I've done is I know that there are areas here where I need to put extra metal in because it's just too frilly. So there's one there and there's one down here. Rather than put that in as a separate patch, what I've done is left tabs on here so that this bit along there gets welded in. This bit I can, once the flange is actually welded on, I can chop that out and then just hammer that tab around carefully, and then that should fill in that hole. So it just means it's all one piece and there's a little bit less welding to do. I've cut out my piece of steel and I try to hold it in there and film one-handed, but you can see what I'm going for, and that actually fits really nicely. I haven't actually bothered sanding the edges down yet. I just had a good idea, and like a lot of my good ideas, they come after the event, which is a bit of a shame. The other way of making the template would have been just to scribe off this, which is the new wing, because of course that's what it's got to marry up to. But it's been useful nevertheless as a kind of sense check. Just been, I can't do it one-handed, but you get the idea. Can I use a foot? Can I use a foot? There you go. Sort of, you get the idea that that is going to work. The angle is going to be right, thickness is going to be right, and yeah, before I weld this in, it's just nice to know that it's going to work. Right, so this is probably what I should have done the first time round. I've cut my strip very roughly, just eyeballing it really, and then I've clamped it on so that bit is flush with the return of there, like that, all the way around. I've then just drawn on the back side with a marker pen so I know where to cut. The only thing is I'm going to deliberately leave it a little bit big because this is clamped on the outer face, and obviously when it's in the car it's going to be on the inner face, so over a distance like that, that's actually going to shrink it quite a lot. So it'll still be a case of doing final fettling on the car, but at least I'm another step closer. Right, so that's the general idea. That's not stuck together, that's just me holding it. It's starting to get dark again, so I'm going to pack up now because there's no point getting the welder out. Again, I'm going to go and get some zinc primer, just shove it on that exposed steel so it doesn't flash rust. Next time I'm rather hopeful that I can actually start trimming up the, oh no, bollocks, I can't. Yeah, I've still got to trim off all that bit around there, work out exactly where I'm going to join it, then start prepping the other panel. But what I'll do is I'll put the other panel on first, just trial and error to make sure these are right before I bother tacking these onto the car. It's the next day, it's about 5, everyone else is buggering off. I'm here with the welder making best use of the dry weather. I am going to, while it's still daylight and I've got good visibility, try and tack these on in rough position, my repair patches. To do that, or to make a really nice job of it, I'm going to get the wire brush on the drill and just go around the inside of that to clean away any crap so that I don't get farty rusty welds, or not rusty because there's no rust left, but there will be stone chip and stuff on the back side, so get rid of that. I'm going to patch in some of these and dress that so it's a nice flat surface for my wing to go onto. Stitch a couple of bits that I've just gone through on there. I still haven't cut that brace out. I don't anticipate the wing moving, but there's no point cutting it out at the moment because it's not actually in my way, and it just adds a little bit of rigidity. And then I'm also going to hammer that flange back onto the sill and finish that bit, so then I've got a nice solid area around there to go ahead and start putting my wing on. I'm not going to be rebuilding the bottom edges down here and here until I've actually got my wing on. I might repair that bit, but I won't go crazy because chances are I wouldn't be able to rebuild that shape to the correct profile without having the wing on there anyway. So we'll aim to get that on now. After that, quite how far I get, I'm not sure. Getting into the final nitty-gritty of prep before tacking this into position. I can't remember yesterday, I think I did go into this, but it probably wasn't a very good explanation. My initial plan was to cut no higher than the original radius on there because I didn't want to lose that as a datum line. I then talked about being able to set this on the bottom and then weld into that corner so I get nice good heat penetration, which is why I left that a bit long. But it occurs to me that I will in fact be making the panel about 1 mil longer than it should be. So two options. One is set this up inside like that and the weld upside down, or cut a tiny bit more off or sand a little bit more off all the way around, so that when that is tacked in, it's back at that original level. And I think that's what I'm going to do, simply because I think I'll be getting a more reliable weld than if I weld upside down onto the edge of that. So I'm going to go get the sander, mark this about 1 millimeter higher all the way around, then sand it off. Right, so I've got my first few tacks in. That's fitting in there. Just kicked my earth off. You can see the way it follows the arch lip round, and yet it's ever so slightly up of vertical, sorry, of horizontal as it goes round. And I've got a nice little shelf most of the way around and gap so that I can get, that's quite a big shelf there, so I can get really good penetration on between the two parts and yet still have enough meat in there to sand it and have a nice strong piece of steel for my other wing to go onto. So what I'm going to do now is tack it where it's, the shelf is quite small. Then when I'm happy its positioning is right, sand back areas like that where you've got a bigger shelf, so that I'm not bothering to like put weld onto this. I want it to actually penetrate in to make a nice fillet on the back side of that, as it were. So I'm just going to carry on doing that because it is the end of the day and I've got to get as much progress done as possible. Probably not going to do much filming. It's going to look like big leaps, but that's just because it's getting winter again and the days when I'm actually going to be out here welding is going to be limited. So we have the weld done in there, down here. That's about as far as I'm going to dress it back, so that's still very strong. I'm not going to go through and make it invisible because there's just no point, because you're never going to see it. So I'm just going to carry on doing that until I run out of daylight. Right, so I've filled in those holes there. A bit's come through on the back side, but I don't really care. Once the wheel's off, I can get in there with the die grinder, clean that up. Done most of the way around here, apart from these two tabs, which ultimately are going to get chopped out there, folded round, done, but I'm leaving them for the moment. Tacked that one in, so that follows that nicely. And then up here, I've just left it a little bit long and it's overhanging at the moment, the other one. What I'll do is I'll get the cutting disc and just try and get it in there and hopefully not cut through this tyre at the same time, because this is, well, it actually holds air, that one, unlike two on the other side. Right, things are going pretty well. It is starting to get a little bit darker now. The sun is setting. This lip now is welded in all the way round. Excuse the low light photography, but yes, I've got a really strong lip all the way round. As I said, those tabs need to be done Oh, yeah, there's literally not enough light out here really to film. Those tabs need to be done and folded round. The bottom here I haven't done because I'll do that from the inside once the wing is on. That's done. I need to do that corner, and then I will, as I've been promising in many videos, go back and do that top edge and get that panel off ready for the new one to go on. Right, so all of that's done now, all covered in zinc too. I've done that bit in there. I'll have to grind back some of those welds, but it's on there and protected. That's the wheel arch lip all the way around, done, solid. So while it's still, I mean, it's not exactly light, but there is some light out here. Can the camera focus? It can sort of focus. There we go. So I'm going to get the tailgate up and start investigating that rear closing section of that rain gutter. Okay, here we have our panel, car, quite obviously. Blue is car, black is panel. This wing includes the rain channel which forms the lip for the boot opening. So this bit, and that is spot welded onto that inner wing panel here along that edge, and also along that flange. And then I think, and I will do some investigating in a moment, but I think there are a few straight through the panel on top. So I'm going to get a wire wheel, clean off the paint here and see if I can find them, and if I can, I'm going to start drilling them out. What I might do is, where it's onto the flat, I'm going to use a spot weld drill bit so that I don't go through the panel below, or I don't do quite as much damage. But on this flange, I'm going to drill from this side all the way through, or from that side all the way through, and that'll leave me this panel with holes pre-drilled in it effectively for when I come to plug weld onto there. Because obviously the access is going to be a lot easier welding this side than leaning over and through the top from that side. So yeah, excavate, nice plug weld drills that side, and then full on drilling through there on this side, and then hopefully a bit of chiseling, and that bit should come off. I'm hoping these show up in the light, but basically you can see spot weld, 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 spot weld. Basically they're littered through this whole area, which is really annoying because that means more work for me. And then we've got 3 or 4 across that edge there. So I'm going to go and get a center punch and start drilling those. So I've just marked those with a punch. Probably can't see. Oh well, you know what I mean. You just about see them there. There we go. And now I'm going to use a spot weld drill on them. And this is not the spot weld drill with what looks like a tiny hole saw. This is the one that looks like a badly blunted drill bit, but still has a spike in the middle. And these ones, hopefully, you don't do as much damage to the panel below. Well, that's the idea anyway. I am quite frequently wrong, so I have to keep updating these videos, but I love it when I'm wrong because sometimes it's in my favour. So I thought there was a flange along there and 2 were plugged weld together, but this is just completely sitting on top of that, and that flange is actually part of this, so I don't need to drill out any spot welds sort of going this way, which is super. I've drilled out most of them. A couple of them have gone all the way through, which is a shame, but I think it's just because this rear lamp panel is probably a little bit frilly up in that corner, so it was probably going to happen anyway. Just a quick tip or observation really. As I'm drilling these out, I'm finding more, because I try and lever this panel off and it's obviously stuck. So can you see how there must be one in there because of the way the metal's distorted? If I leave the chisel wedged in there when the drill breaks through the top skin, they pop apart, and unless, well, it gives me a sign that it's gone and I don't have to keep drilling and going through the panel underneath. So it's just an easy way of seeing that you've got to the right depth and you don't have to keep damaging that panel below. Well, it's been fighting me, but we are very close. It's just held on by that bit in the bottom corner where the spot welds have kind of disappeared to nothing. It's also a bit rotten there, as you can see. Come on. Yeah. Ah, there we go. Nice. Right, so that can go in the scrap pile. Let's have a look at what we got here. Come on, phone. Right, yeah, so that should clean up quite nicely. That's all just surface rust. I might have to remake the top of that flange and maybe the end of that lip, but other than that, pretty damn good. I'm going to sign off now because I've probably got about 10-15 minutes worth of video, so when I get back on this I'm not sure, but yeah, that's the end of the video.